a wealthy entrepreneur.
He was very generous and very giving to the community.
And his closest friend.
A good old country boy. He was like a brother.
Are ruthlessly gunned down.
It had all the hallmarks of an execution.
They would have died almost instantaneously.
Police chase down an elusive killer.
A case like this is like a jigsaw puzzle.
We had no hair, no fingerprints, no DNA left behind. Who had a reason to kill both of these men?
It's a complete whodunit.
Until the case takes a jaw-dropping turn.
Oh my gosh, where's my mother?
She was held at gunpoint, tied into a chair, and held captive there for a few days. They had more firepower than our SWAT team had.
And finds a killer
This just didn't add up.
no one ever suspected.
It was a real shock.
He had, I felt like, 2 different lives.
And then you quickly realize that it was all a lie.
You think it's over, but it's not over.
A killer may have gotten away with murder.
Conway, Arkansas, a small city with southern charm, just outside of Little Rock.
It's a great place to live. It's a great place to raise your kids. You know, not a lot of crime, and it's made that way because of the people that live there.
But on Sunday, May 19th, 2002, police receive a 911 call that shatters the early evening peace.
There's people shot next door. I don't know what the situation is, but some girls came over running to my house like crazy. They said someone had been shot. Everybody had been shot in that house.
Police race to an upscale home in the city's affluent West End.
Patrol officers went inside the residence, saw 2 deceased individuals laying in the foyer. It was clear to them that we've got a double homicide.
Homicide detectives arrive on the scene minutes later.
Once I entered the residence, I saw the 2 victims. Both of them were laying face down in the floor. Their hands were to their side, palms up, and blood had pooled around both of their heads. Based on the coagulation of the body fluids, it appeared that they had been down for quite some time. The first of the 2 victims appeared to be an older gentleman, and he had a folded white towel placed on the back of his head, and there appeared to be a gunshot artifact on the back of the towel. The second victim, the younger man, he had a gunshot wound to the back of the head, and there were white fibers on the back of his head, consistent with the same white towel.
Detectives find no sign of a murder weapon, but something else grabs their attention.
We found a ball cap, and inside that ball cap there was an unspent .45 caliber round. We weren't really sure if that was something that had been purposely left there at the crime scene or if that was done inadvertently.
An extensive search of the house finds no evidence of forced entry.
There were no signs of disturbance and tons of things of value that were still inside the home. Both wallets of the victims were found in the next room. That kind of took away from the idea that this was some sort of robbery or home invasion.
My professional opinion was it had all the hallmarks of an execution.
But if this was an execution, why were the victims targeted? And who were they?
A young lady by the name of Brandy that had discovered the bodies told us who she believed the victims to be. We were able to confirm with photo ID that the older of the 2 was the homeowner, Carter Elliott, a local businessman. The second victim was a close personal friend of Carter Elliott, Timmy Wayne Robertson of Star City, Arkansas. Brandy indicated that she and Carter were in a relationship, and she knew Timmy Wayne because Timmy Wayne sometimes stayed with Carter.
Brandy agrees to go to the police station for questioning, while police reach out to the families of the two victims to tell them the terrible news.
I was in my apartment and my mother came over. She said, "Oh, Ashley, I'm so sorry." And I said, "Who died?" And she said, "It's your father." I just crumpled to the ground and felt like I had been punched in my stomach, and all I could do was cry my eyes out. I didn't know what had happened. I just knew he had been shot.
From his humble roots in the tiny city of Helena, Arkansas, to owner of a multi-million-dollar chemical company, Carter Elliott was a self-made success story.
My father was an amazing man. He and my mom got married in El Dorado, Arkansas. My mom was 17 or 18, my dad 20. He didn't go to college, but he's just dedicated and a hard worker and very driven. My dad was really social and he was a lot of fun. He was like social butterfly. He was just fun to hang out with.
Behind that larger-than-life personality was a man devoted to giving.
He wanted to help people. If you were around him or spent time with him, you were taken care of.
One of the people Carter helped was a young man who Carter met through a family friend.
Timmy Wayne had kind of a rough upbringing, and my dad took care of him the way he took care of everybody that he came across. He was like a brother. He stayed at my dad's house. We celebrated my birthday together. He went to my best friend's wedding. I mean, he was just part of the family.
Now, both Carter and Timmy Wayne are tragically gone. What's left is the mystery of why this happened and who could have done it.
I can't fathom what had happened or transpired to be shot in the back of the head, face down. It's just so unbelievable.
At the house, investigators continue combing the crime scene.
We dusted the house for latent fingerprints. We went through the trash. We're looking for anything in particular that might give us a legitimate lead.
Police also canvass the neighbors, hoping someone can point to a suspect or even when the shootings occurred.
Even though this was a very quiet neighborhood, not a single neighbor heard a gunshot, not a single neighbor heard a disturbance. So it really was quite baffling. We had no firm direction to go in as far as a potential suspect, and nothing that really told us when this potentially could have occurred. Anything was possible. I walked out of that house and I had as many questions as I did before I walked in. There were numerous things that just didn't fit. I needed to find out what was going on.
Coming up,
detectives dig deeper.
There's so much that is bizarre.
People suspected some type of romantic relationship.
And discover troubling evidence.
He had a large hook that was in the ceiling.
We found adult diapers.
Before the truth blindsides everyone.
All of a sudden, we had a person that nobody really would suspect.
It sent a shockwave through the community.
I was terrified. I was traumatized.
I don't believe that was an accident.
Hours after discovering the murder of successful businessman Carter Elliott and his close friend Timmy Wayne Robertson,
detectives are searching for more clues.
The little evidence we had was at the crime lab, but we had no firm direction to go in as far as a potential suspect.
Detectives bring in Brandy, Carter's girlfriend, who discovered the bodies.
When I investigate a homicide, I look at anybody who has a potential to be upset with the person that would be a motivation to end someone's life over.
If you don't mind me asking, how long have y'all been seeing each other?
I would say probably since last fall.
Are you and he pretty close?
Yeah, we hadn't even had a disagreement.
We also want to know whether or not they had a motive, means, and opportunity to potentially commit the crime themselves.
Would Brandy reveal anything to indicate she might be a suspect?
Trying to establish a timeline here when you last talked to Carter.
Saturday night at about, and I'm estimating 11, 12 o'clock, I talked to him on the phone. I was in Memphis, Tennessee. He was at home, he said, in Conway.
Brandy says the next day, she and a friend headed to Carter's house when they got back from Memphis.
You know, I just opened the door. And his head is right there at my feet. And I immediately look up and I see another person, and I know exactly who it is. I mean, I see Tim Wayne all the time. I mean, I would recognize that body if I couldn't even have, you know.
Detectives ask if Brandy knew who might want Carter and Timmy Wayne dead.
Do you have any opinions, ideas?
None.
Anything? Anybody you would suspect? Is there anybody that you can think of that may have had a grudge or was mad with Tim?
Not that I know of.
As detectives pull Brandy's phone records to confirm her story, they receive the results of the autopsy.
The medical examiner's report gave us an idea of a timeline that these two victims were killed late Saturday evening. In the case of Brandy Watkins, we were able to account for the fact that she was in Memphis, Tennessee at the same time that the murders were committed.
Investigators now have an idea of when Timmy Wayne and Carter were murdered, but the autopsy report also reveals chilling details about how the two men died.
The medical examiner was able to tell us they were both flat on the floor when they were shot.
The autopsy report has one more valuable revelation. The killer used special bullets called Glazer Blue safety slugs.
This particular type of ammunition was a rarity. It is extremely expensive and is extremely devastating.
It is also the same type of bullet found in a hat at the crime scene.
I considered it a huge lead because when we found the offender, if they had a tie to this particular type of ammunition, that would be a good indicator to us that we were on the right track.
Armed with new information, police reach out to those who knew Carter and Timmy Wayne to see who might want either man dead. They start with Carter's ex-wife, Lark, who divorced him 10 years earlier.
Our investigation revealed that their breakup was fairly tumultuous.
But did Carter's ex-wife have any reason to harm him? Detectives bring Lark Elliott in for an interview.
She told us background information about the issues that they had when they were married and the breakup of their marriage.
They had been married for 18 years. I think my mother and father always had a kind of a roller coaster of a relationship. My dad was passionate and he was vocal, and at some times you couldn't gauge what was going to happen next. It was not a very fun time to experience.
Lark tells detectives she eventually divorced Carter in 1992. Now living in Salt Lake City, Lark remarried a doctor named Dick Conti.
Dick was a friend of my mother's family, and Dick had gone to medical school with my uncle, and that's kind of how their relationship started.
Lark denies any involvement in Carter's death. And when detectives ask Lark where she was the night of the murders, she says she was over 1,000 miles away in Utah.
We were able to determine, based off of phone records and work schedules, that she was in Salt Lake City, Utah, when these crimes occurred.
With Lark ruled out as a suspect, detectives shift focus to Timmy Wayne Robertson. Was it possible that the 25-year-old friend of Carter was the intended target?
We interviewed the family of Timmy Wayne Robertson, all of Timmy Wayne's close friends, talked to girlfriends, ex-girlfriends, to find out if there was anybody in particular that Timmy Wayne had issue with, any fights, any bad breakups, anything that indicated that he was the intended target, but nothing that involved Timmy Wayne. Just really rose the level of somebody being mad at him enough to want to hurt him. Everything from an investigative standpoint kept telling us it had to be something to do with Carter Elliott.
Detectives are back to square one. Then they get a crucial tip from someone familiar with Carter's businesses.
We were told about the local businessman that had partnered with Carter in some business ventures. We found out sometimes he would have words with Carter.
Was it possible the two men were killed because someone targeted Carter over a business deal gone bad?
A bad business deal could be a reason to have committed these murders.
Something was going to happen. Something would break. I'm looking for business issues that led to two people being brutally murdered in West Conway.
Detectives investigating the murders of Timmy Wayne Robertson and Carter Elliott have just received a tip about a possible conflict between Carter and one of his business partners.
Danny Cook was a local businessman that had partnered with Carter. From what we were told, they had had words from time to time regarding the different businesses that they were involved in. We weren't sure at that point in time if this was maybe a business-related dispute or something like that.
Detectives bring the 38-year-old businessman in for an interview and ask about his relationship with Carter Elliott.
In the last 3 or 4 years, we'd actually started some business ventures together. We have quite a few of those together. I always paid all the bills.
We have to look at all of those different businesses that they were involved in, especially when it came to anything that potentially could have led to hard feelings.
Was it possible a disagreement over money between Danny and Carter turned deadly, with Timmy Wayne caught in the crossfire?
I can only imagine what's going through y'all's minds about this.
Potentially every human being on the face of this earth is a suspect.
Oh, yeah.
We rule them out.
Right.
Danny dismisses any notion of conflict with Carter.
Well, I'll just tell you this, Carter was my best friend. Everybody's got a best friend. I'm sure y'all have a best friend.
Yeah.
Danny also tells police that the night of the murder, he was at home in bed, nursing an ailing stomach.
I've been in a lot of pain, and in the evenings I take pretty much enough medicine that it knocks me out.
Detectives look into Danny Cook and Carter Elliott's business dealings.
We determined that we would seek a search warrant for financial records as far as transactions to see if there were any that would have been outside the norm.
But as investigators look into Carter and Danny's business, they uncover something much more personal about Danny's wife, Carla.
An employee of his suspected that Carter and Carla were having some type of romantic relationship. We had several different people tell us that it was water cooler talk. He was a single guy. He liked the ladies.
If the rumors are true, Danny's jealousy could be a motive for murder. Detectives question Carla about her relationship with Carter.
Carla indicated that they kind of flirted with each other, but she considered him more of a brother-type figure than anything else.
Danny also dismisses the rumors of an affair.
Danny Cook indicated that he did not suspect his wife at any point in time of having an inappropriate relationship with Carter.
What's more, both Carla and her son can confirm that Danny was at home in bed at the time of the murders.
Both appeared to have been at home during this period of time.
There was never any real evidence except for could have been. And the law requires that you have something more than mere speculation.
After hitting a dead end with Danny Cook, investigators drilled deep into Carter's life, looking for anyone who could be a possible suspect.
We interviewed business partners, investors, former employees. We interviewed a group of men that gambled with Carter on poker. We went in every conceivable direction, trying to run down every potential motive, and we just kept coming up with nothing.
Detectives still have no solid leads 3 weeks into the investigation. And the failure to identify a suspect is taking its toll on the victims' families.
We were traumatized. Nothing in life is going to prepare you for murder. I don't think that's something you process.
Ashley also worries about her mother, Lark, who has just lost her ex-husband and is now struggling in her second marriage.
I would go back and forth between Utah and Arkansas to be with my mom. She and Dick were going separate ways, and they had broken up.
As the weeks pass, hopes of finding the killer start to fade.
I never like to lose, but it's a complete whodunit. You start to wonder in the back of your mind, is this going to be the case that ultimately I'm not able to solve? I felt like the family of Timmy Wayne Robertson and Carter Elliott's family needed to have that closure. They needed to know what happened.
A killer may have gotten away with murder. That is a huge tragedy for these two men and for these two families.
Then, out of nowhere, a startling development rocks the case.
I had received a phone call that my mom had not shown up for work. My mom goes to work no matter what. I contacted the Salt Lake Police Department and I asked the police department to go to her house. Her bed was unmade, her closet was a mess, things were out of order. Oh my gosh, where's my mother?
One month after Carter Elliott and Timmy Wayne Robertson are gunned down, Carter's ex-wife, Lark, has disappeared in the middle of the murder investigation.
Is she on the run from investigators? Or could she be another victim?
I did not know if my mother was alive. I didn't know what had happened. I had just lost my father. I wanted to know where my mother was.
In a panic, Ashley and her brother reach out to Lark's second husband, Dick Conti, whom she recently divorced. They call him at his cabin home outside of Carson City, Nevada.
I got him on the phone. Dick was crying and just profusely saying, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm sorry."
Ashley wasn't expecting what she heard next.
He had taken my mom as a desperate act in hopes of getting her back. I didn't know what had happened. I just knew he had her. He kidnapped my mom. He allowed us to talk to my mother. My mother was just completely out of it. My mother told me that she was there against her will and he was unstable.
Ashley is afraid of what Dick might do next.
Dick was crying and threatening to kill himself. He was just overwhelmed with emotion. Who knows what Dick was gonna do?
Ashley frantically reaches out to Nevada police.
Ashley was panicked when she called us. She felt that her mother's life was in danger.
Ashley begs police to go to Dick's cabin in the Sierra Mountains, but warns them of Dick's threat of violence.
It's extremely dangerous for our first patrol officers going in. Somebody was on the phone with Dr. Conti trying to calm the situation, keep him calm. He spun this sort of unreal story about how she was a willing participant. This wasn't somebody that had a plan. He was acting more emotionally than he was logically. Eventually, they got him to surrender peacefully.
I was told my mother was safe, and I'm thankful for that.
Lark is rushed to the hospital as a precaution. She tells police how Dick had abducted her.
He had been lying in wait for her, and then she was held at gunpoint, and then he drugged her, putting her in the back of his truck, and drove from Utah back to his cabin. When she woke up, she was tied into a chair and held captive there for a few days. I was sort of surprised that a man that was considered a prominent emergency room physician in our area could do something like this.
Back at the Douglas County Sheriff's Station, Dick Conti says splitting up with Lark pushed him over the edge.
She didn't want to be married anymore. It just literally drove me crazy and devastated me, I guess.
It ultimately took about 5 hours to get the entire story, but he admitted everything that he had done related to the kidnapping and imprisonment of Lark.
I thought that somehow, by having her come back to Carson, I could rekindle something that isn't there anymore.
But Dick casually mentions something else about Lark that gets detectives' immediate attention.
She recently had her ex-husband who was murdered.
What was his name?
Carter Elliott.
Carter Elliott. You know any of the circumstances behind that?
Only what she's told me.
Nevada police contact the Arkansas detectives investigating the murder of Carter Elliott and Timmy Wayne Robertson.
I reached out to Conway, who confirmed that this was actually a crime that had been committed there.
When detectives hear what has happened to Lark, their investigation takes on new life.
The ex-wife of our victim here in Conway is kidnapped. That was too much of a coincidence, and cops will pretty much tell you that they don't believe in coincidences.
Did Dick have something to do with Carter and Timmy Wayne's death?
If he would kidnap his ex-wife, what else could Dick be capable of?
Arkansas detectives rush to Nevada to interview Lark's ex-husband.
Have you ever met Carter Elliott?
No. I talked to him twice on the phone when I was at Lark's, just to pick up the phone and say hello.
The detectives asked Dick where he was the night of May 18th, when Carter and Timmy Wayne were murdered.
Do you have a calendar or something I can look at? I think I worked the night of May 15th. I got off and drove to my cabin in Duck Creek, Utah. I know I didn't leave there till the 21st.
Did you talk to anybody that you could think of?
I can't think of anyone that
Did you recognize or might have recognized you?
Yeah.
He seemed very calm, given the situation that he was currently involved in. He came off as wanting to be helpful.
After Dick is charged with the Lark's kidnapping, investigators are eager to search his cabin home for clues.
They were able to get a search warrant to go into Dick Conti's home. Dick Conti had this image that he was a successful emergency room physician. Open the front door, and then you quickly realize that it was all a lie.
Detectives investigating the double murder of Carter Elliott and Timmy Wayne Robertson are executing a search warrant at the cabin of Dick Conti. The Nevada doctor has just been arrested for kidnapping his ex-wife, Lark Elliott, whose first husband was Carter Elliott.
From the outside, it was very picturesque. Once you got inside the cabin, you realized that he lived kind of like a hermit.
It was very dirty. There was evidence that animals had been in and out of the house.
Then, police find something even more disturbing.
Everywhere in that cabin, you could pretty much reach a firearm.
The volume of weaponry we found, it was pretty extraordinary for one person. He had more firepower than our SWAT team had.
That isn't the most troubling discovery detectives make.
He had a large hook that was in the ceiling. We also found that there were hidden video cameras all over the house.
But nothing prepares detectives for what they find next.
Investigators found maps to Conway. He had notes related to Carter Elliott, his address, letters from Dick Conti to Lark that said that he was willing to do anything to get her back, and the books that discussed how to be a silent assassin.
The next discovery is even more damning.
We found blue tip Glaser safety slugs, the same type of ammunition that was used to kill both of our victims in Conway.
For Dick Conti to have the same type of ammunition really raised our suspicion that Dick Conti committed these homicides.
As police collect evidence from the cabin to take back to Arkansas, investigators begin to try to answer crucial questions. Did the Nevada doctor execute Carter Elliott and Timmy Wayne Robertson in cold blood? And if so, why?
Dick Conti, by all reports, was a very competent emergency room physician. You have to stop and question what was the motive.
Detectives sit down with Lark to learn more about her second husband.
I mean, there is so much about him that is bizarre. He had, I felt like, two different lives. He portrayed himself to be this, a doctor upstanding in the community, when in fact his other life he had guns, everywhere, weapons everywhere in his house. And that's not something that I wanted to be a part of, was his other life.
Lark also says Dick wouldn't leave her alone after she left him.
Conti had gone on a campaign. He begged Lark to come back through phone calls and sending her letters and cards. When the little things didn't work, then he would escalate.
Was it possible Dick Conti's obsession with Lark caused him to target her first husband, Carter Elliott?
Did you ever make any statements to anybody about you might consider reconciling with Carter Elliott?
Not to my knowledge.
Did you and Conti ever discuss Carter?
I was planning an engagement party for Ashley, and Carter, Ashley's father, was going to come to the engagement party. So he and I were talking on the phone about the party, and maybe that sparked some kind of jealousy in him, being that he was so possessive or obsessed with me. Maybe Conti's nature was that if I can't have Lark, nobody can have her.
The motive in this case was clear. Dick Conti was willing to do whatever it took to get Lark back. That meant taking out his competition. Carter Elliott and Timmy Wayne Robertson got in his way.
Dick Conti had a motive for murder, but did he have the opportunity? He denies being in Arkansas that night.
Conti had told us that he was at another cabin that he owned in Duck Creek, Utah.
We were able to put together the last landline call he made at Duck Creek and then the first one he made again on Sunday.
Was that enough time for Conti to have killed 2 men over 1,300 miles away?
We seized his truck and we found adult diapers and a number of gas cans, which would have allowed him to drive to Arkansas back without having to stop for fuel or use the restroom.
We had the right gap in time that gave him enough time to drive to Conway and back.
The theory that Dick Conti is the killer is a compelling one, except for one major complication.
There was no physical evidence that put Dick Conti in that house that night. No hair, no fingerprints, no DNA left behind. And we had not been able to match any of the ballistics from the murder scene to any of the guns found in Dick's cabin.
The odds were stacked against us, but given all the circumstantial evidence that we had, we all believed Conti was responsible for killing these 2 people.
Dick Conti is jailed on kidnapping charges for abducting Lark.
Dick ended up pleading guilty to get a plea bargain. He got maximum time of 15 years for kidnapping my mom.
But prosecutors know that with good behavior, he could be released early. The pressure is on investigators to build a murder case against the doctor before he gets out.
The standard that we have to reach is beyond a reasonable doubt. A case like this is like a jigsaw puzzle. Reasonable doubt slips in pretty quickly.
9 years pass as investigators painstakingly seek out evidence to implicate Conti.
Even though I had been given other assignments, I continued to follow up, even if I had to do it on my own time.
Prosecutors hold off laying charges in hopes of building the strongest case possible. But Conti's release date is approaching.
Could the family handle us going to trial and him being found not guilty? That could happen.
If prosecutors fail, Lark and Ashley fear for what might happen to them if Dick walks free.
Dick murdered my father. He murdered Timmy Wayne. And if he could get to my mom, he's gonna kill her too. I was petrified of Dick. I was convinced that Dick would kill us.
Almost a decade has passed since Carter Elliott and Timmy Wayne Robertson were brutally gunned down.
That long space of time felt like hell to me. You think it's over, but it's not over because you're just waiting for what's gonna happen next.
The prime suspect, Dr. Dick Conti, has spent the last 9 years in a Nevada prison for kidnapping Carter's ex-wife, Lark. But he's about to be released.
My fear was there was a very good chance that if he was released, he could just disappear.
2 days before Dick is set to go free, prosecutors charge him with 2 counts of first-degree murder. The Nevada doctor is extradited to Arkansas to stand trial.
We had evidence, but unfortunately, a lot of it was circumstantial. You always have a little bit of a knot in your stomach as a prosecutor when you've got a case like this, especially one that's high profile.
But before Dick Conti even steps foot in a courtroom, a surprise witness comes forward.
A cellmate of Dick Conti said that Dick told him that yes, he had killed Carter Elliott, but that we couldn't prove it. And he also said they'll never find the murder weapon. To get information like this is always kind of a double-edged sword. Are they credible? Is a jury going to believe them?
The big thing was making sure that the jury found it credible. And so that meant that they weren't going to get anything in return for their testimony.
At trial, prosecutors present their case to the jury.
Dick Conti was a scorned lover, and that was our theory of the case. You know, he was in love with Lark, and he was willing to do anything he needed to do to keep her. And if that meant that Carter Elliott was a threat, then he had to eliminate the threat. Timmy Wayne Robertson, unfortunately, became a victim as well.
In front of the families of Timmy Wayne Robertson and Carter Elliott, prosecutors reveal how the crime unfolded.
Dick Conti went to the door, dressed in police tactical attire, and yelled, "Police, search warrant." Once they opened the door, he burst in, ordered them to the ground, and then had them place their hands behind their back, placed the folded towels on the back of Timmy Wayne's head, and immediately executed him. And then he turned around and did the same thing to Carter Elliott.
Dick Conti had planned it down to every detail so that he would be certain that the only things that were left at the scene was what he intended to leave at the scene. Some sort of a calling card in the form of an unspent bullet. I don't believe that was an accident.
The jury hears from a host of witnesses, including Lark and Ashley, who testify about Dick's relationship with Lark and how he kidnapped her.
The kidnapping spelled out what kind of motive he had and what he was capable of doing.
The defense argued that with the lack of DNA, with the lack of fingerprints, with the lack of a murder weapon, a case was just merely circumstantial. And they also said that there was no reason for Dick Conti, to commit these crimes.
On January 22nd, 2013, after only 40 minutes of deliberation, Dick Conti is found guilty of 2 counts of capital murder and sentenced to life in prison.
I felt relief. I felt like justice had been served, and I feel like he received the punishment that he deserved.
There was a relief that there was some level of accountability and justice for the family and for our community, but also justice is a pretty poor substitute for the loss of a loved one.
For Ashley Elliott, the memory of her father and friend are not in how their lives ended, but in how they were lived.
If people think of my dad, I hope they focus on the positive things that he did in his life. He left a legacy behind, which is my brother, and myself, and our children. And he was a wonderful man. And Timmy Wayne, I just will never forget Timmy Wayne's smile. And he was just gentle and kind and just as country as they come. And I loved that about him. And he was just there anytime I needed him.